In the early 1960s, a young boxer from Louisville, Kentucky, terrorized all of America. His name, Muhammad Ali, 6 feet 3 inches and 220 pounds of muscle, power and evasion, a devastating combo that won his first 30 professional fights, including 22 by knockout of his opponent. The frightening beginnings of a monster and a mouth as big as his talent, of a boxer born to dominate his sport. If you're looking for an athlete from the 60s to 70s with as many available archives as Cassius Clay, it doesn't exist. If you're looking for an athlete whose alchemy between his athletic career and his extraordinary personality fascinated crowds everywhere he went, you'll surely never find better than the life of Muhammad Ali. In his eyes, there was the arrogance of the prodigy, the rage of the fighter, the madness of the artist. In his fists, there was the power of an icon. Crazy combinations, unique footwork, an inimitable style, hands fast as lightning. Provocative boxer, brilliant athlete, global sports figure and everything around it. The eternal image of the black boxer in white America, torn apart by segregation and racial tensions. The American dream like in the movies, but with an actor who had written the script himself. The 1960 Summer Olympics took place in Italy, in Rome, and brought together athletes from around the world for 150 different events. Despite the Soviet Union's crushing victory in the medal count, the United States discovered an 18-year-old boxer, gold medalist in the light heavyweight category, after winning all 4 fights to reach the Olympic title without any difficulty. His name was Cassius Clay, and he had just entered the big leagues after his beginnings a few months earlier at the National Golden Gloves, an amateur competition bringing together winners of American regional tournaments. A competition he won in light heavyweight in '59, then in heavyweight in 1960. The young Louisville native didn't waste time and took advantage of his rising fame after the gold medal in the Eternal City to turn professional with already blind confidence in his talent. The smile is present, confidence is very high, the guard is a bit lower. First fight and first victory for Cassius Clay in front of his home crowd in Kentucky. We're at the end of 1960. 2 years after his first professional fight, the boxer had already made some progress and remained undefeated after more than 15 fights, the majority won by technical knockout of his opponent. Basically, in boxing, there are 2 types of KO. The classic KO, when the opponent is unable to get up after 10 seconds, often after taking a huge hit, and the technical KO, when the referee himself is forced to stop the fight because one of the 2 boxers can't continue, he's still conscious but he's not doing anything to fight anymore. Cassius Clay, he did a bit of both. Sometimes it didn't last too long, a good left to the jaw isn't really pleasant, and sometimes it lasted a bit longer. And it's precisely in this specific case that the American appeared strongest. Like his press conferences, Clay constantly brought intensity, he turned in all directions, never really seemed tired, and his extraordinary coordination allowed him to dodge the vast majority of his opponent's attacks. Tall, powerful, and with the reach of a king-size bed, the boxer asserted himself more and more by winning several fights in important boxing venues of the time, notably in New York and Los Angeles. Very young, very confident, Clay's character divided crowds but filled halls, including the prestigious Madison Square Garden in New York, packed to capacity for a fight against the formidable Duke Jones, beaten on points by the fury and surprising endurance of the Louisville Lip. 5-4-1 even, favor of Clay. Yeah, you heard that right. Clay got booed by the crowd for several reasons. Well, first, Duke Jones was from New York, but especially, the decision made was more than questionable given the fight, and some were already complaining about the treatment reserved for Cassius Clay, the media darling and rising star who absolutely had to be protected. But nothing really seemed to bother him. 3 months later, in London, for his first professional fight across the Atlantic against an English boxer, the American would impress everyone. Too passive with his guard, Clay took a huge left and fell into the ropes. We then thought it was the end of the fight, his first defeat against the British Cooper, but it took much more to knock him out. Cassius seemed to rise from the ashes and threw everything he had to reverse the balance, crazy intensity in each of his blows, for one of his greatest fights. Miami Beach, its glitter, its beach, its parties, and its boxing hall that was to host the fight between the Hope Cassius Clay, elected Boxer of the Year 1963 and new star of American boxing, and Sonny Liston, WBA heavyweight world champion since 1962. He's too ugly to be the world champion. The world champion should be pretty like me. He told me to bet my life so you won't go. If you want to lose your money, bet your money. For the fans, there was no question. Liston's power and agility would make quick work of Clay's inexperience in fights of this importance. The two boxers were fighting for the heavyweight belt and sent each other cute poems in the weeks before the fight. On the big day, from the first exchange of punches, the tone was clearly set. The incredible liveliness and speed of the outsider made Liston dizzy, who ended up in the ropes several times after the supersonic combinations of his opponent. Defensively, too, he seemed to always be one step ahead and tired Liston, who missed his target each time and hurt his shoulder by hitting air. But Sonny would come back little by little against a Clay who seemed bothered and refused to fight, blinded by his opponent's ointment that he supposedly got in his eye and severely bothered during the fifth round. Dodging his opponent running to all four corners of the ring, Clay came back after the break in much better shape to finish off a clearly diminished Liston who was forced to quit from the sixth round. The young American had just exhausted his opponent. He was heavyweight world champion at 22, transcended by the fight and still as modest. This evening of February 25, 1964 marked a turning point in the boxer's life. His last fight under the name Cassius Clay before his conversion to Islam and his transition to the name Cassius X, thus rejecting his slave name Clay that he had carried since birth. He joined the Nation of Islam and took the name Muhammad Ali a few weeks later. On paper the name changed, in the ring though, it was still the same thing. After his 20th consecutive victory in his fight against Lee Stone, Muhammad Ali followed up with 10 consecutive victories, including 7 by knockout of his opponent. The recipe was always the same: constant aggression, low guard and legs always moving, ready to dodge and counter his opponent to put him on the canvas. Visually it was very impressive, technically it was too strong. The analysis time at the beginning of the fight, the small steps to gauge his opponent, the speed, the reflexes and the rhythm to accelerate and hurt badly. His special, the jab. A direct punch with the arm extended that allowed him to hit hard while staying at a distance from his opponent. Classic KO, technical KO, in Toronto, in London, in Frankfurt or in the United States, Muhammad Ali crushed everything he encountered in fights that lasted more than 7 to 8 rounds could be counted on the fingers of one hand. Ernie Terrell, one of his opponents in '67, refused to call him by his new name before the fight and took Hurricane Ali full in the face, who pushed him to the last round to humiliate him. "You told me your name was Cassius Clay a few years ago. I never told you my name was Cassius Clay." At the end of his 29th fight won, still 0 defeats, in March '67, the boxer would make headlines for a completely different reason than his talent in the ring. 4 years already, the champion had been striking with his insolence and pride before and after fights, always had the right words, war in the ring, war of words, this hyper-media presence having built his popularity around this character he played marvelously. "And be ready to fight, because I'm coming for you, I'm coming from London for you." But a month after his victory against Zora Foley, Muhammad Ali made headlines for something other than a good right thrown at his opponent. On April 28, Ali refused to serve for the American Army's intervention in Vietnam. The decision shocked a country where the Army is king. Ali lost his boxing license and his world champion title and received a 5-year prison sentence a few weeks later. He then became the symbol of counterpower, a highly mediatized sports figure who opposed national duty, a thunderclap in the boxing world, and a decision that Muhammad Ali would obviously condemn in vain, dragged through the mud by the media and deprived of official competition until 1970. 3 years after his conviction, Muhammad Ali finally won his case before the American Supreme Court, which authorized him to recover his boxing license. After a first comeback fight that he won after the 15th round against Argentine Bonavena, known for his resistance to his opponent's blows, Ali got back in shape before going back to conquer the world champion title. But at the time, another boxer was making headlines since his Olympic gold medal in Tokyo in 1964. Joe Frazier, only 5 feet 11 inches, but a real puncher who hit very hard. A superb defender whose anticipation qualities allowed him to dodge blows, notably through vertical movements, adept at close combat and blows to the ribs. Very enduring during his fights, workaholic and equipped with a left hook that could make a punching bag pale, Frazier presented himself in '71 as the undefeated anti-champion, winner of 23 of his 26 fights by knockout of his opponent. A machine that could scare Muhammad Ali away from the rings for 3 years, and whose form was questionable before the big fight everyone was waiting for. The two boxers, friends before the fight following Frazier's permanent support during Ali's suspension, would end up hating each other following Muhammad Ali's classic lyrical flights in the weeks preceding the confrontation. The South Carolina native couldn't believe the violence of Ali's words and would admit it later in the locker room before the fight. He prayed to kill Muhammad Ali. On March 8, '71, Smoking Joe and the self-proclaimed the greatest faced off. In a Madison Square Garden ready to explode in case of victory for either boxer, Ali, very aerial as usual, took the upper hand in the first rounds and proposed very good combinations that forced Frazier to defend and refuse the fight against the power and speed of his opponent. The crazy intensity given by Ali in the first minutes of the fight disturbed Frazier, who didn't take long to respond from the beginning of the fourth round. Visibly better prepared for a fight that lasted, Smoking Joe, more regular, reversed the fight's trend thanks to his punch and his special left that sent Ali into the ropes several times. Despite the violence of the blows delivered by Frazier and the duration of the fight, Ali resisted as best he could and the fight continued until the 15th round. Without too much surprise, Frazier was declared the winner on points and kept his heavyweight world champion belt. Smoking Joe had just smoked Muhammad Ali. The terrifying animosity and duration of the fight marked minds and the bodies of the two champions, forced to spend several days in the hospital after the confrontation. Muhammad Ali had just suffered his first professional defeat against someone stronger than him, a legendary fight that marked minds and left traces. Muhammad Ali had lost, but he would do everything to get back up. In the months following the fight against Smoking Joe, he faced the big names in American boxing of the time and won 10 fights in a row to reassure himself and prepare his return to serious business. But the beginning of 1973 was marked by two major events. First, Joe Frazier, still undefeated, was humiliated by George Foreman, Big George, the new king of heavyweights, 6 feet 3 inches and 220 pounds of power, who sent his opponent to the ground 6 times for the most striking victory of his career. 2 months later, to everyone's surprise, Muhammad Ali was beaten by Ken Norton in California, though far from being the favorite in this fight. Despite similar dimensions, Norton seemed more sharp in the ring and surprised Muhammad Ali from the second round with a right hook straight to the jaw. At the end of 12 rounds, Norton was declared the winner by 2 judges out of 3. The equation was therefore the following. If he wanted to regain his legitimacy and honor the nickname he had given himself, Ali had only one solution. He had to get revenge on Ken Norton and Smoking Joe and defeat the Colossus George Foreman to recover his title. 6 months later, Ali got revenge with difficulty on Norton in Los Angeles, a fight he never really managed to control, winner on points after the 12th and final round. By recovering the North American champion belt, Ali followed up against Joe Frazier in January 1974, in a fight without glory with a clumsy Muhammad Ali, winner on points against the former world champion. Out of shape and overwhelmed, Smoking Joe at least had the merit of responding to Muhammad Ali's provocations a few days before the fight, during a press conference that turned into a settling of scores between the two stars. Ali had passed the first 2 passes. He was now at the foot of the George Foreman mountain. Big George terrorized his category and remained undefeated after his 40th fight, including 37 won by KO in record times. No one resisted him, his right hook wreaked havoc and his power terrorized everyone. The fight was scheduled in Kinshasa in Zaire, today's Democratic Republic of Congo, on October 30, 1974. Muhammad Ali was on a mission. His objective, to use his mobility, his great strength and resist in the first rounds against Foreman's aggressiveness to drag out the fight as much as possible with the goal of exhausting his opponent. Ali trained, worked on his endurance, rehearsed his scales to implement his plan and recover his belt that he had lost 7 years earlier. Muhammad Ali traveled through the country to commune with the people who had become fans of him. Everywhere, the same scenes of jubilation and ecstasy at the passage of the American superstar, the compulsive showman whose character was very popular, a country that became for a few days the epicenter of the global sports scene. The show was everywhere. The two men obviously sent each other a few jabs before the fight. Nearly 80,000 spectators would be present in the Kinshasa Stadium, ready to welcome the rumble in the jungle. All of you, I know you got him. I know you got him, Dick. But the man's in trouble. I'm gonna show you how great I am. George Foreman has that serious look. Ali definitely talking to him. Look at the stare on George Foreman. Look at Ali. From the first minutes, the trend was clear. Ali hit Foreman several times and took the blows without flinching, thanks to incredible resistance and supersonic dodges. The two boxers went blow for blow, but Foreman tired faster and lost clarity as the fight progressed. His face destroyed by Muhammad Ali's effective combinations, Foreman resisted as best he could until the final seconds of the 8th round. Muhammad Ali had just won the greatest victory of his career. He had managed to put on the canvas the Colossus who had dominated his category for already a few months. The accomplishment was monumental. The fight had kept all its promises. Tactically, Muhammad Ali had eaten George Foreman and recovered his WBA heavyweight world champion belt. Big George would later say the fact that he didn't hit me when I fell to the ground makes him the greatest in my eyes. First, the bell, the third fight between Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier, the third installment of one of the greatest rivalries in history. After the revenge won by Ali a few months earlier in dubious conditions, Don King, star promoter of the time, decided to organize the bell between the two boxers in Manila, capital of the Philippines. Like the first two fights, verbal violence and trash-talking raged between the two champions, notably Ali, who continued to regularly insult Frazier. Muhammad Ali, 32 years old, had fought 3 fights since his victory against Foreman, 3 not-so-easy victories won over duration. On the evening of October 1, 1975, in suffocating heat approaching 50 degrees in Manila, the fight started, tension mounted. Frazier had found all his pep and the energy that characterized him in 1971 and attacked Muhammad Ali, who had nevertheless started well in the first rounds. Despite effective jabs and rights that went well on Ali's side, Smoking Joe hung tough, took hits and responded. The fight was of rare intensity, bodies suffered the heat, the blows, the tension. Only adrenaline and pride allowed the two boxers to stay standing. During the 13th and 14th rounds, Ali seemed to take the upper hand physically and pushed his opponent to defend, hammered by the power of the Louisville boxer's blows. At the end of the 14th round, Frazier was exhausted, marked, disfigured. His trainer decided not to let him resume, and Muhammad Ali was declared the winner of the fight. He didn't even have the strength to celebrate and fainted in his chair, surrounded by his team, who tried to fan him. At the end of the effort, after an epic demonstration of the very essence of what boxing is, the two boxers were adored and had just, according to many, fought the greatest fight in history. Would you have been ready to risk your life to get out of that final?
Yeah.
The sulphurous past, the quality of the boxing proposed, the drama, the fight had reached heights. Ali had recovered his honor and succeeded in his bet by beating his biggest rivals at the peak of his career. Then came the beast. After the fight against Joe Frazier, the greatest won 6 fights in a row to keep his title. Between 76 and 77, not necessarily brilliant, not always very fair, he nevertheless suffered his third defeat against Leon Spinks on February 15, 78. Revenge as usual a few months later, enough to recover his title, then 2 new defeats in almost general indifference. Muhammad Ali's physical condition having significantly deteriorated for several months now, and his fights representing nothing more than commercial showcases for his manager. The image was strong and went around the world. For several years already, Muhammad Ali had been living with Parkinson's disease and showed his fragility for the Atlanta Olympic ceremony in 1996, lighting the Olympic cauldron. Like a symbol, 36 years after his gold medal in Rome, where it all began. Muhammad Ali is a giant of sport, physically first but culturally especially, civil rights activist and figure of black emancipation in the United States. Ali never held his tongue when he had to set a journalist straight and proclaim his pride in having succeeded, despite all the obstacles related to his skin color. I took my gold medal and thought I had invented something. I said, I know I want to give my people freedom. I'm the champion of the whole world, the Olympic champion. I know I can eat inside now. I went inside, I had my big gold medal and I went to the restaurant. At that time, things weren't integrated. Whites couldn't eat inside. The girls told me, we don't serve Negroes. I had to leave their restaurant. They just wanted my gold medal. They couldn't eat inside. I said, something's not right. Especially since at the time, no black boxer really broke the silence to fight against racism, at the risk of breaking his career. Muhammad Ali traveled everywhere to transmit messages of peace and meet the great personalities of this world, notably Nelson Mandela in South Africa, with whom he became very close. The one nicknamed the People Champion left no one indifferent and propelled the culture of the show before, during and after fights, sometimes to the edge of reasonable. But Ali did it for pleasure and fear too, perfectly using his charisma and aura to mask his fears before certain fights, notably against his 2 greatest rivals, Big George and Smoking Joe. The slightest appearance of Muhammad Ali gathered and fascinated crowds, the boxer elected by the BBC in England as the greatest athlete of the 20th century. For me, he was a great inspiration. He was my idol. What he did in the ring, outside the ring, nobody will reach half of what he did. He colored it, not for a single country, he colored it for the whole world. He is the greatest of all time, and he was the greatest of all time because of what he did outside the ring. For an athlete like me today, without Muhammad Ali, I wouldn't be here speaking in front of you. What a phenomenon! You had to see him. He moved around the ring, he had style and class, he was tall and well-dressed. You could do what you wanted, he would be on his feet for the next round. And to be honest, Riffy, he belonged to art because he had poetry, he had everything. By the way, little anecdote, the first sporting event broadcast in color by satellite was a Muhammad Ali fight in 1966 in Germany. And a second one too. Muhammad Ali did wrestling for an evening, but well, that one, we don't really care about. Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. A sharp sense of phrasing, clear commitments to religious freedom and humanism, mad talent with shorts and gloves, capable of placing Africa and Kinshasa at the center of the world by his simple presence. In the ring and outside, the Louisville lip seemed elusive, aerial, the power of words before, the power of fists after. Extraordinary boxer, legendary showman, iconic character in the world, Muhammad Ali left us in 2016, after fighting the disease for 32 years. His last true fight is perhaps the most important. I said last time, I had a dream. When I arrived in Africa, I had a huge rumble. I had to beat Tarzan in reverse, pretending to be the king of the jungle. When George Floyd meets me, he's gonna pay his death. I can fall asleep drinking water and kill an old creator.